Again. This is the final Shelter Without Place, a series that we started at the beginning of Shelter in Place, where we kind of decided, how do we still have the same impact and still inform and change perceptions about our unhoused neighbors, the way that our team members get to do in their shirts when they're not out there sweeping up. And we realized that we have a great network of partners and people that can really shed a lot of light on these issues. And it seemed to make sense to wrap this series up before moving on to, say, another series with a theme that has been pretty prevalent and ongoing throughout this series, which is how do we help? And so this last event is called Helping at a Time of Crisis. And we've got some really great panelists. I'm particularly excited today because of the caliber of our panelists. And we'll get to them in a second. My name is Chris Richardson. I'm the Chief Program Officer for Downtown Streets Team. Been here over 10 years. And as I always tell people, I think I have the best job in the world. But not about me, it's more about our panelists first and foremost. Marie Bernard is the Executive Director of Sunnyvale Community Services. SES has been a very unique partnership for us since we launched our Sunnyvale team in 2012. And even before that, in planning that launch, they are an incredibly well-run nonprofit, and it made a lot of sense to include Marie as part of this series. She has a lot of experience and insight to give. So Marie, could you quickly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about SES and the work that you do?
Thanks, Chris. And yes, we've been partnering with Downtown Streets Team for many years. We were one of the first cities to really join forces. Sunnyvale Community Services is an emergency assistance network agency here in Santa Clara County. We're one of 7. Together, we cover all the zip codes and all of the people who are in need in the Santa Clara area. Our area is Sunnyvale and Alviso. And we also help people from throughout the county who may need food and emergency assistance in terms of getting connected to services. Our whole focus is preventing homelessness and hunger. We do that through financial aid, food assistance, year-round case management, and partnering with people like Downtown Streets. Sadly, 1 in about 10 people that we serve now are already homeless. And that's why the work that we're doing together is so important, especially during the COVID-19 crises. So thank you.
Yeah. And Marie's got a great perspective as a service provider that, quite frankly, historically has really leaned on community volunteers. And so we're going to talk about how that's changed quite a bit. Next up, Betsy Levy-Adams is, she's got, her title is Global Places Project Coordinator at Looker, which was recently acquired by Google. She's representing herself today, not necessarily the organization, Looker or Google, but I think she's kind of their lead do-gooder. That's kind of how I think of Betsy. She's also on our Community Advisory Council for our Santa Cruz team. So welcome, Betsy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm very honored. I wouldn't say that I'm our chief do-gooder. We've got quite a few do-gooders at Looker, but it's the Downtown Streets Team partnership that we started to develop beginning of last year has been magnificent, and we really, really enjoy having the opportunity to volunteer with all of you. So thank you.
Yeah, and when we thought about who from our corporate partners, looking at the entire landscape, I just really appreciate the partnership that we've had with Looker. They do not just fundraisers for Downtown Streets Team, but sock drives and hygiene kit collecting. They've done one of our apply-a-thons where we help team members navigate online applications and build resumes and stuff like that. So, a lot of corporations, say they want to change the world for the better. I think the Looker employees that we've interacted with are doing something about it. And so it made natural sense to invite Betsy on to this panel. Our final panelist today, Natan Mesfin, he is a young gentleman that I have known since he was 11 years old. And he's one of the best fundraisers we've ever had at Downtown Streets Team. We're going to delve pretty deep into his incredible story of how he got started fundraising for unhoused individuals, not just with Downtown Streets Team, and what he continues to do. And he's an absolute inspiration to all. He's also a former member of our Community Advisory Council for our San Jose team. And I don't, he better get into college with those extracurricular activities. I'll say that. So thank you, Natan, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And then we do have a special guest later, actually our board treasurer, but I'm going to save that as a surprise. Well, not a surprise, but I'll save that for a little bit later, and we'll jump right into our panel questions. And I wanted to start with you, Marie. I mentioned that your organization has historically had hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteers annually come through your doors. A lot of your operations have been dependent upon volunteers. There's a real fun attitude when you walk into SES. People are there because they want to be there, and they're smiling, and you're actually greeted by volunteers, and that has been the case. But obviously, nothing's the same these days. And so, how has the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, changed the way that people can help right now?
Well, it's been very difficult because for everybody, we have heartbroken volunteers, and we do have about 2,500 volunteers throughout the year, which is an amazing number in too small of a space. With the COVID-19 crises, we've had to pivot and figure out how to remain connected to our community and all those volunteers who really want to give back. We need them to be safe. We worked with our city, with public safety, and with our city to help us figure out what could we do on site and what did we have to stop doing or do differently. We have a very small number of volunteers, including city staff. The deputy city manager from Sunnyvale is one of our call center volunteers right now. We have a small number of people on site at any time. And instead, what we're asking the community to do is to, first of all, keep themselves safe. Secondly, to really think about giving back if they are not without shelter, to consider giving back financially so that organizations like ourselves have the wherewithal to get what is most needed and to do what we have to do. And then we've scaled back our programs so that we're doing everything as much as possible so that less hands and less people have to touch things. Food is not virtual though, and one of our biggest programs is food. And so the challenge we've had of working with Second Harvest Food Bank and others is how can we get the food quickly packaged on a scale of 1,000 families a day coming and make sure that we're doing it in a really safe way. We had to just totally reinvent all of our programs. So right now we have few people on site, but we have hundreds of people who are helping us off-site. They are taking bales of bags home to double bag for us. They are driving food to the homebound, and they're also sending in donations until we can be together again. We're hoping that is going to be very soon, but the involvement, the very important face-to-face that I think we all need has really had to scale back. We're keeping in touch with people. We're involving them via email and social media and mailings because we have to remain tethered to our community. And they want to know what's going on, and we want them to know that we still value them and we desperately need them. As soon as things start to open up, we're going to need them even more. It's hard though. It's a totally new world for us who we are such, as you pointed out, a friendly, engaging, high energy, extremely motivated place where people come, and we're family here. We've had to break up the family in the short term and make sure that they all know, especially some of them are suffering right now. Some of our volunteers, the bottom fell out for them. And so we're trying to make sure that we're there for them as well. We're somehow doing all of our financial assistance. We have speakerphones set up. We are open, but people cannot come into our building. So we are doing financial assistance through the phone, actually through the glass, through speakerphones, through electronic means. We are processing 6 times the usual number of financial assistance cases, 607 in 1 month, more than we've ever had to do before. And having a few city staff and a few core volunteers, having food pre-packed from the food bank, and also with a lot of financial assistance that is coming through the door, we're making it work.
I know in our discussions recently, you'd mentioned that there's a couple of volunteer slots with very specific skills that you're looking to fill. Do you want to make a public pitch here?
Well, people who we know that the city staff are going to be going back to their jobs, and so we had highly trained people who were able to answer the hundreds of calls that we're getting. People who are desperate to get financial assistance, food, connection to services, help in any way. And so people who are bilingual in Spanish, in Chinese, and also several other languages, Vietnamese is one, Russian is another, but especially Spanish, people who like talking to people on the phone would be invaluable for us. And we need a handful of those folks. And if people are interested, they can go to our website, which I'm sure you'll have later. And also, we do have some folks who are doing some very particular database entry and database screening for us. That's very highly trained, and I think we probably are okay in that arena right now.
Well, it's certainly frightening and has been. Certainly, I've seen this in doing this work in such an affluent community to see people struggling. And scary. And then there's also the need to feel like we're doing something and tangibly helping. And that can be hard. And I'm glad you touched on that. I know our team members are begging to come back and start cleaning up the streets. They're begging us. They're begging to say that we don't care. We'll get out there. And the good news is hopefully in a couple weeks, we're getting a lot of help from our government partners, and we're going to be able to do that in a safe way and engage them. But it is really tough right now. We all want to feel like I'm assuming everybody that joined this web event wants to feel like they're doing something positive in a time like this. So thank you for hitting on that.
I will say one other thing is we have mask makers. I'm wearing right here. The outpouring of creative people coming to us and doing that has been amazing, and we shared some with the folks over at the Sunnyvale shelter. Because they did not have enough. So we're a place where things are being gathered. People are gathering their talents like that, and we're able to at least assist there.
We could use that as well. Sunnyvale Community Services and Downtown Streets team, if you want to make masks, please reach out to us. Our email addresses will be at the end. We'd be happy. My aunt just made me, you can't even see it, can you? This cool Boston Red Sox one. So I sport this around town. So I'm going to move on to Natan, and we'll get back to Marie and all of our panelists. But I want you to share a little bit about your story and what inspired you to start fundraising for unhoused individuals and Downtown Streets team.
Yeah, so I've been working with Downtown Streets team for about 7 years now. Or I've been fundraising for about 7 years now. I started when I was 9, and it happened on Christmas Day in 2013. And I noticed on the news that many homeless people were dying from how cold it was. Therefore, I decided that I wanted to raise funds to buy sleeping bags. So during my family Christmas dinner, I had everyone pledge money in my family, and then after I received all the money, I bought a lot of sleeping bags, and then I distributed them around the Bay Area, mostly in San Francisco and Berkeley. And then I did that for a few years, and then I was with Downtown Streets team when I was 11. I started working with them. And I noticed that giving sleeping bags was kind of a short-term help. And I wanted to figure out something that was more long-term, which is what I did with Downtown Streets team. And my funds would go to giving, if people had for example, a job interview, we could buy them clothes for that, or if they need help paying rent, etc. And yeah, to this day, I've raised about $54,000. So hopefully we can keep that number rising.
Certainly. And we're currently using the funds Todd now holds kind of a black ball fundraiser every year, and the picture we had in his introduction was from one of those events. So he does that every year for us, and this year we're using it for an employment flex fund in our East Bay operations with our 3 teams there. Pretty incredible. I think, especially when you were younger too, it's so compelling to see a young person say, I want to do something about this. That doesn't necessarily, you don't have a salaried job, right? And so a lot of us feel, especially in a time like this, well, maybe I can give, especially if I kept my job through COVID so far. I had a friend of mine reach out to us yesterday and donate for the first time ever. And I, thanked him, and he said, I feel just really lucky to have a job right now. And I know I'm not like that. And so I wanted to bring you on specifically because your story is so inspiring, and you do, you've done so much more at a young age than so many.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say to people that are like you, that see something, that bothers them, that they want to do something about? And how would you encourage them to take action besides giving you money at your fundraiser?
Yeah. Well, really, it just doesn't really matter how young you are or how crazy people think your idea is. Like, if you have a good idea, I really just think that you should just go for it. Make sure you have the right people to surround you, and make sure you can accomplish your goals. But yeah, it really, it helped with knowing that I was doing a good thing. Especially for me, originally, I didn't really notice how much I was helping people. I thought I was just doing a few small good deeds, but when I really saw, when I gave the people the sleeping bags and seeing how happy they were and how excited they were to get the sleeping bags, it was just like a spark that happened in me, and it was great to see how happy they were.
It helps being a full-fledged board member when you're 11 years old too, right? The San Jose Streets team.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. I'm going to move on to Betsy now. And as I mentioned earlier, looking at our corporate partners, immediately thought of Looker. And they're not just with Downtown Streets team, with many other local nonprofits and organizations, and thought about their dedication to service in the community. And so how do you think this came about at Looker? Like, how did that culture of service and community come about?
So we call it the Looker Cares team. So Looker Cares came about, I think, maybe a couple years after Looker really got started in 2012. And the VP of Human Resources at that time decided to make like a formalized team of it. And it's all volunteer based. So now we have, people kind of ebb and flow depending on their workload and everything like that. You don't always necessarily have as much time as you would like to contribute to these kinds of efforts. But at this point, we still have our monthly meetings. Obviously, we've gone virtual now. We still have our monthly meetings, and in those committee meetings, we usually have between 7 to 10 attendees that are very consistent, and that's when we discuss the different opportunities that have come our way.
And I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but it really does feel like the employees actually care, and they're not just doing this for good PR. Why do you think it's important to have that type of culture? How is it important to Looker? And maybe also, what benefits does Looker get out of it as a corporate entity that really puts in the time and lets their employees help out the community?
I definitely think that having that culture just really contributes to a sense of having an actual community. It's not just a place that you go to work. I definitely feel that the values that the founders of Looker put together and then they hired based on those values has created a company full of really kind and really generous people. And it just makes it a really fantastic place to go to every day. So one of our values is actually do. And so, that's all about, taking action, taking risks, getting results. And, obviously that applies to the business model, but it also applies to just how we operate in our normal lives. And so our Looker Cares team has really taken on that, and we put out, kind of like monthly opportunities to do to our Looker community. And I feel like those cultural values really do lend lend to creating a fantastic community within the work environment.
How do you choose what issues to tackle? I mean, we're obviously thankful that you chose Downtown Streets team and to help us out and to be so integrated with not just, here's a check, but, with our team members and getting to know them. And for those that don't know, the Looker campus in Santa Cruz, which was their headquarters, butts right up against this back alley. And our downtown team actually launches out of that back alley. So we are very literally neighbors.
We love that about DST. And I think that one of the most beautiful parts about like how we choose is, Santa Cruz, as lookers come in and out of work, they've noticed the DST members and be like, oh, hey, it's the folks in the yellow shirts. They're like, oh, thank you so much. We see that they're beautifying our, the place where we walk into the office and everything like that. So that was very visible. And I love that about DST. And I love the idea and the goal of changing perceptions about people experiencing homelessness just really resonated with us. Normally when we're choosing opportunities, we would, different folks from Looker or outside of Looker would, get a hold of myself or my colleague who heads up the community involvement team, Danielle, and kind of put out opportunities to us. And then we would, formulate those into a meeting agenda. And then we would discuss those in that monthly meeting with the committee members. And we do try and make sure the opportunities align with our 3 pillars, which are environment, education, and community, or at least aligning with 1 or 2 of those. So, partnering with say Surfrider Foundation really aligns with our environment pillar, as well as, the education factor as well, because you're learning about the beaches and the ecosystems that exist there. Downtown Streets team, obviously very much about that community, that environment as well, because DST is cleaning up the neighborhoods. And then also, education as well, because you're really showing people how to change their perception of folks experiencing homelessness.
Especially around these parts, corporations have so much power and so much ability to do good. And I think many corporations are deciding to infuse this sense of volunteerism, whether it's paid days off for volunteering or matching donations, that type of thing. If someone's out there and they're working in a for-profit job, and their company maybe isn't as engaged as an organization like Looker, what would you say to them to kind of not rally the troops, but to get started or propose an idea of doing something like Looker has with a care team?
Absolutely. I feel that if you really figure out what your employees care about, that's going to make a difference, because if they feel engaged with the opportunity that you're presenting, they're much more likely to really participate and really contribute time. So, whether that be, if you're working for a company that does a lot of environmental type work, maybe you would want to partner with a nonprofit like Coastal Watershed Council or something like that. I feel that we're really lucky within Looker because we have so many folks that are interested in so many different things, that we have lots of opportunities come our way, that we've been able to do a lot of different types of things. But I definitely think that engagement and finding out what your coworkers are really interested in is a good way to start. And then also finding a champion amongst your team members, someone who can contribute the time, who has that kind of good spirited energy, and can really, like you said, rally the troops in a way.
Yeah, I imagine getting someone with chief in their title to take interest probably helps.
Yes, that is always helpful. Yes, leadership engagement is wonderful. We've been really blessed in our leadership at Looker. The founder and CEO were always very supportive of the Looker Cares initiative, so that's always been fantastic.
Right. So back to you, Marie. You sound hopeful, and we're certainly hopeful too with resuming our quote unquote normal or semi-normal operations. Mm-hmm. Hopefully soon here, but what is your best guess for what is going to be the new normal in terms of volunteering? And I think we all don't anticipate that we're going to reach the end of May, and then all of a sudden, hey, don't wear masks, everything's fine. I won't talk politics too much, but this isn't just going to go away by itself, despite what we may hear from certain levels of government. What is the new normal for volunteering?
Well, we think it's going to be scaled up as opposed to just turned on like a spigot. And I want to also echo that I think there's a big yearning in corporations, in organizations and businesses to give back, to be involved. So many times we'll see groups of people who are from high-tech companies and where they're relief from coding for the day, or doing something that's very that's often very singular, where they're maybe not working across teams, and it's a chance for teams to get together across teams, across functions, and there's going to be a huge need for that. But we don't anticipate that we're going to be opening up the way we had been until probably 2021. That we're going to be feathering things in, doing things very carefully, very strategically, step by step. We're going to be modeling for our large volunteerism, which is with our food program. We're going to be modeling what the best practices are from Second Harvest, from other organizations as well, and from our city, to really make sure we're practicing things. Our city public safety came in and taught us how to do social distancing and extremely good practices for keeping ourselves safe, and we're going to practice that. So we're already planning what we might be doing differently, perhaps in June. It's going to be steps, not just one big change. We might start with some of the things that we can do outside in the parking lot as opposed to inside, and to do things that could be off-site in bigger places as opposed to on-site where we don't have enough space. It's all about space and distancing, and also limiting the number of people who are involved in different transactions. And everything that we do is a transaction. If you're helping somebody with financial assistance and writing a check, that takes some physicality to it. And that's where there really is risk. So respecting that, the need for that safety and security that people need is got to be at the top of our list. And certainly we're talking about giving back, but the first people who are at risk are folks who themselves are already suffering, and people who are homeless, people who are at risk of homelessness, and respecting them and doing whatever we can to reach out to them and to make it possible for them to have shelter, for them to have a place that's safe. That's where we'll move mountains and engage the community as much as we can. So I don't have a crystal ball. That's our projections, and we're really talking about this real time. We don't anticipate that June is going to be much different than May.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. One of the unique experiences about this is worldwide, we're all trying to adjust the way that we do almost everything. And we certainly wish we had a crystal ball as well. I do know, one of the things that we're always trying to do, in the nonprofit world is raise money. The need is probably more acute than ever. And I know you're certainly, Sunnyvale Community Services is doing a fundraiser right now. We're always doing that at Downtown Streets Team as well. Obviously, that's something that people can do from the safety of their own home. But another thing that they can do is advocate. And one of the things, Natan reached out to me when this was happening, and he just had his fundraiser a couple months ago. So it's not time quite again to do the Natan annual fundraiser. And he said, how can I help? And one of the things I told him to do was advocate. And I also told him, share your story, because your story is incredible, and you need to tell people, you need to inspire others, to dig deep. And then so one of the things that Natan did was write to his local elected officials and up through congressmen, and really urge them to think about unhoused folks and folks at risk of homelessness and low-income folks, and probably prioritize some money specifically for unhoused individuals when they're considering care and stimulus efforts and things like that. We have 2 links so that you'll be able to do that at the end, but I want to applaud you, Natan, for taking that effort in addition to your fundraising. But what's next for your fundraising efforts? What's in the future?
So for my fundraising efforts, just assuming that the virus subsides by the time my next fundraiser happens, which is in December, um, just hopefully it will the virus COVID.
Looks like our connection with Natan is a little spotty. We got you back, bud, but we just missed you for a couple seconds.
Oh, okay. I was just saying, just like assuming that the virus is gone by December.
Same spot. We'll move on for right now, and hopefully, Natan, your connection improves, and we can get back to you. I did want to move on next to Betsy. You and I talking about this. You were able to find a specific way to volunteer with some of your colleagues. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I thought that was incredible.
So I found an opportunity through a platform called Benevity, which was partnering with Hands on Bay Area, was helping out Meals on Wheels in, I think it was like mostly East Bay. And they were looking for volunteers to make phone calls to do wellness checks for the seniors that have the service of Meals on Wheels. Because I guess normally within that organization, the folks that are delivering the meals get to actually, talk to the seniors, make a connection, have that human contact and check in. And during COVID, obviously, they are no longer able to do that. So I had a really fantastic experience. It was facilitated by Hands on Bay Area. And I, spent a couple hours making phone calls to seniors, and they, gave us a list of, how to talk to folks, what questions to ask and everything like that. And it was really, really rewarding. The people that I got through to were super kind and appreciative. And, one woman told me all about the different meals that Meals on Wheels delivers. So that was fantastic. And it was just neat to have that kind of just that connecting point with folks that probably aren't getting to see or talk to people that much right now. So.
Yeah, and Marie brought it up right now too. We did one of these events specifically on social isolation. A lot of times seniors already experience that in the best of times, and in COVID that certainly makes it even more challenging. Marie talked about the importance of reaching out to her volunteers, and we at Downtown Streets Team have been reaching out to every single team member every single day, if nothing more than just to say, hey, we're thinking about you, and we can't wait to get you back on the team. And I see Sean from our Marin team. There are probably a lot of hugs being missed on the Marin team. They're famous for the hugs. How about this is a heavy question, but what about corporate philanthropy moving forward? Do you see COVID-19 changing whether it's the amount that corporations are willing to donate locally, or is it just even the focus? What's your best guess?
I think that I've seen an amazing amount of people just kind of say, what can we do? I mean, how our Looker Cares team responded just to kind of give people resources is we compiled a bunch of different, opportunities to give, opportunities to, volunteer virtually. We focused on kind of reaching out to our community partners here in Santa Cruz and asking, what do you need? Where can folks drop off PPE? What hospitals are accepting donations and everything like that. And so we put together this really big list and then put it out to our office community. I think on a larger scale, I mean, if you look up any of the philanthropic efforts that are in the news right now, it's pretty incredible. And I feel very blessed. Looker did get purchased by Google Cloud. And so now that we've onboarded, we actually have, and I did look up that, public knowledge that we actually have matching donations, which is amazing. So if an employee per year wants to donate, it's up to $10,000 per year. Google's going to match that. So now we have this really amazing resource that we've made sure to share amongst the Looker community to make sure that everybody's aware and how to get into that platform and everything. So I think it's good.
Marie and Natan, we just found our hit list for who to invite to our next fundraiser, right? So Natana, it looks like your connection's a little bit better. We're going to try this again. What's up next for your fundraising efforts? You mentioned December, but what's up next?
Yeah, so like assuming that the spread of the virus subsides, I plan to have my annual fundraiser in December. If it doesn't go in December, or if it doesn't happen in December, because usually I have people come to the event, to the fundraising event, it's probably about 80 people. So if that doesn't work out, I guess we're just gonna have to do it online.
Okay. The new normal.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, want to make sure that we have enough times for Q&A. So thank you for answering those questions, panel, but please stick around because some of those questions may be directed at you. And I'm going to move on before I get in trouble, because I'm going to move on to my one of my bosses, Mike Boulton, who is a partner at Armanino, but also our board treasurer, Downtown Streets Team's board treasurer. And he gets us through our audits every year. So this guy is worth his weight in gold. Thank you, Mike, for joining us. I wanted to bring Mike on specifically for those of us that are not CPAs. There's been a lot of confusion over the last couple of years about tax deductions when it comes to donating. Because the tax code changed, there's now a higher standard deduction. Certainly, our sector, we worried that a lot of people weren't going to be giving as much, if they can't use that for, or we can't use that as a tax incentive. And the rules have changed recently, directly in response to COVID. So, Mike, I was hoping you could walk us through what those changes look like for our nonprofit partners and for prospective donors down the road.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chris. I'll try to keep this brief because it's IRS and accounting and that type of stuff. But as brief background, a lot of you probably heard back, it's been a little over 2 years, the Trump tax reform, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act changed a lot for individual taxpayers. It increased the standard deduction, and it resulted in about 30 million people shifting over who used to itemize their tax deductions to be using the standard deduction. So what does that mean now? There's been a fear that less people have tax incentive to give to charities, even more so when there's a global crisis like this. So during this crisis, the CARES Act was passed into law, which was the federal stimulus program. And one aspect of that was to change the tax rules to hopefully jumpstart charitable giving and give every taxpayer an economic reason to do what they might do otherwise and give to charities throughout the country that need it most right now. So I'll briefly highlight some of the changes just in case it impacts you individually or people you talk to out in the community, or if you're trying to help raise dollars for a charity. First, very briefly on the corporate side, corporations can deduct when they give to charities. They can deduct that from their taxable income. So the limits for that have been raised, more than doubled. So now corporations have an incentive to give more to the charities that are in need right now, and they can deduct more of those dollars. And then the other two aspects are on the individual taxpayer side, like all of you and myself. Those who have maybe give a large portion of their income every year, now that limit has been raised as well. It used to limit to 60%, now it's 100%. So typically high net worth individuals that give a lot of their annual income, now they can give it all and have full tax benefit from that. And then lastly, which really impacts the overwhelming majority of the country, there's a new $300 deduction. You might have read about this on some of the headlines, but roughly 9 out of 10 all taxpayers in the United States use the standard deduction. So they don't get a tax benefit when they give to a charity. Now they do. So for 2020, every taxpayer can donate up to $300 and receive deduction on their taxes at the end of this year. So what does that really mean? If a taxpayer gives $300 to a charity, they won't pay taxes on $300 worth of their income. If they give $500, well, then they still have that $300 they won't pay taxes on, and the additional goes straight to a charity. So even those who use the standard deduction get some economic benefit, and the hope is it infuses cash quickly to charities that need it most right now.
Thank you, Mike. I am in a master's program and just took a finance course, and I could have really used you on my final recently.
Yeah.
But you can see why I brought Mike on. And I'm going to ask each of you and Mike, each of our panelists and Mike, kind of what motivates you to do this type of work. But before I do, I remind everybody that please use the chat feature if there are any questions you have for me or for the panelists or Mike in particular. But I guess let's start maybe Betsy. You go way out of your way to not only organize your colleagues, but to sit on our community advisory council and to do this great work in your community. What motivates you to do that? Why, you don't have to. There's something, you're not getting paid to do that work. What motivates you to do it?
Human connection, making sure that we all feel like we are, worthy of that care and that help. And, some folks who have fallen on hard times and, are experiencing homelessness or, it's just like the Just Say Hi video resonates so much with me because we're all human beings. And we all, deserve to have a high quality of life. And so I feel like that's what motivates me because, I've grown up in this area and I love this area and I want all the people in my community to be comfortable and happy and, well taken care of. So if I can even contribute just a little bit to that, then makes me happy.
You definitely contributing. And we appreciate you on our Community Advisory Council very much.
I appreciate getting to be a part of it. Thank you.
We've got a great group of folks down there in Santa Cruz that are really helping us connect to the community. Mike, you're not only on Downtown Streets Team board, you're very connected to nonprofits, and every nonprofit is dying to get someone of your skill set on their board to help them. And I know our COO in particular is very appreciative of you, probably on a daily basis. But it's something, you're a busy guy with a lot of commitments. What motivates you to reserve some of that time, that precious time in your schedule to help out organizations like Downtown Streets Team?
Yeah, for me personally, it's there's many causes around the world, and a lot of them are extremely important. And I try to think of how I can help. For me personally, it gets overwhelming. It's I don't know if I have the courage to do something like Natan does and get out there and really do that type of work that he does. And so we bless him for doing that. So for me, when I boil it down to how can I take action and create impact, it's maybe applying the professional skills that I have. And so how can I help an organization like DST or others do the things that they might struggle with behind the scenes that aren't as in the limelight? And if I can do that to help the leaders such as yourself, Chris, feel more confident with the organization, get away from those burdens and go do and act in the mission that you're trying to serve, then I feel like I'm helping you do your job better. And that's how I can make an impact.
Well, you absolutely are. And I'm sure Elfrida would want me to pass on, please don't go anywhere anytime soon. We do really appreciate all the work that you do for us and allowing us to do the work on the front lines. So Natan, you've got, Mike mentioned you being out on the front lines, and it's scary to get up there and ask people for money. I can tell you that for a cause that you believe in. It's hard for even some of our staff members who get paid to do it. What motivates you to do that every single December?
Yeah, every dollar I raise, it directly helps unhoused people. And I've had the pleasure of meeting some of the people who have directly benefited, and and that's from the funds I've raised. And seeing that in a small way, I notice that I'm making a difference, and that's what motivates me. I already know I'm very privileged, and just knowing that some people don't have the basic needs, that it's just bad at this point. I just feel bad, and that's another large reason why it keeps me motivated to keep doing this.
I'd say for a lot of us, imagine everybody that's joined us today, we get a daily dose of motivation just driving to work or going anywhere when you see, blue tarps and tents out there. And so I appreciate every effort that you put into helping us as an organization and connecting more people to this issue in particular. So Marie, you're last but not least, you are a Wharton MBA. You could probably be, running one of these tech companies. What motivates you to do this type of work? The pay is not the same. I know that for a fact.
Yes, but well, I was very fortunate. I worked here at Hewlett-Packard for many years, and I have to say that back then the values were very similar to what Betsy's talking about. It helps to fill your soul, but I knew about 15 years ago that I was ready to really work the work that was in my heart. And I'm very blessed because nonprofits are a business. We have to operate that way. We have to be accountable. We're helping people with other people's money. Our customers don't pay for the services they receive. And it's a very different bargain that we have with the community. What's rewarding, and I will echo what Mike and Betsy have said, the outpouring of people who understand this is the time to give has been exceptional. I wake up every day and I worry about it, but the biggest worry I have is, are we going to have enough resources? And we will, if we have the services, show the need, the money will follow. And with that, then you work very hard to make sure the money follows, or the money is actually there before you need it. What's been interesting to me is to see that some people who set up family donor advice funds are now, who had given us hundreds of dollars, are now saying we're going to give big. So they're going back to their donor advice funds, where they're sitting there with a lot of wealth, even after all the stuff happening with the stock market, and they're saying, this is the time to give big. This is the time to dig deep into that fund, because this is the rainy day that we've all talked about. And so appealing to people and saying, this is the time, we have to strengthen each other, we have to be there for each other, and making the case for the work that we're doing is essential for everybody. The best phrase I heard about all this is, we're all in a storm. And some people have said, well, we're all in the same boat. But it's actually that a lot of people don't have a boat. A lot of people are in this storm without any shelter. And those of us who have some shelter, have some means, need to step up and do this work. And it is hard work, but it's also a lot of enjoyment, including even writing grant proposals with you. To the 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, where we have a belief and we want people to join us in doing the work on this side, because many of us in this sector have been on the other side of the table. And it's very much seeing ourselves in the people that we're helping, because we've been there. We could be there. And in many ways, our spirits need to be filled as much by them as by us helping them with something that might be material. But what's essential is the souls that we're working on ourselves and others. And I see that when I go to the team meetings. I mean, and that's what we really, really miss, of course, is that gathering, that strengthening that we get when we volunteer, that we get when we have a meeting, that when someone gets help with a job. And the easy way to brighten somebody's day, just through a smile, a gift card for something so they can go get a new pair of shoes, an amazing outpouring of love back that gets to all of us here. And you get to feel like you're doing something, which is, in these days, it's hard, because I get to come to work and I'm working with a small number of people, but I'm not alone right now. And I'm blessed by being able to work alongside 6 feet and more feet apart, but with people who share that with me. And I'm getting to see faces. So I'm not going home and saying, gee, I haven't talked to anybody today. My stress right now is, did I stay far away enough from people who I was seeing today?
Yeah, I said earlier I have probably the best job in the world. It has been a really I think we are lucky in a lucky position that we get to go to work every single day and do this type of work, but especially in a time like this when so many are laid off and sitting at home watching Netflix, we get to go out and really make an impact. All of our panelists, we get to do that, and so that's pretty special. And what this subject is all about. Thank you for that, Marie. I wanted to bring you on just because the respect we have for you, and I am not going to publicly on a recording say that Sunnyvale Community Services is our favorite partner in the nonprofit world, but I will publicly say it's certainly one of them. You do incredible work, and you're a well-run agency. So for folks looking to help out Sunnyvale Community Services, especially residents of Sunnyvale and Alviso, definitely look to them as well. Okay, with that, we didn't have any questions today, but we did want to wrap up with the few minutes that we have left. I want to turn it over to my colleague, Rebecca Baer. She is going to talk us through a little bit of what can we all do? Maybe not our panelists, but what can the rest of us do to pitch in?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. Rebecca Baer, Senior Director of Community Engagement. Like Chris, I feel like I have the best job in the world because I get to tell the DST story, and it's just such a pleasure to be able to tell the story of the great work that we're doing, and also to learn about what our partners are doing. I want to say thank you to the panelists. I've learned so much today from all of you, and I hope everybody else on the call has learned just as much as I have. As Chris mentioned, one of the reasons that we wanted to bring this panel together is because we've heard from so many people that they want to do something to help. And I think that the panelists have definitely given us some things to think about and ways to help. We use this video and we tell people that when they want to help folks in their community who are experiencing homelessness, to just say hi. The human connection that we have with people is so important. And I think it was Betsy who said earlier that, they get to go out and tell the folks in the yellow shirts, thank you. And that makes such a difference to team members who experience people looking down upon them to now become heroes in the community of folks that are cleaning up the streets and keeping things looking nice. And so we ask for you, if you are in a place where you feel comfortable, to just acknowledge the humanity that we all share by just a simple nod and a hello, if that feels good and safe to you. The other thing that we're encouraging folks to do throughout the COVID-19 crisis, but certainly a lot of these things are applicable outside of the crisis, is to carry socks, gift cards, prepackaged food, hygiene kits, hand sanitizer, gloves, masks, toilet paper, things that folks maybe don't have as much access to during the crisis, but also items that are valuable at any time to people that don't have shelter. The other thing that we've talked a lot about today is volunteering, and there's a resource link here through California Volunteers. We're also going to share an email address for Sunnyvale Community Services. So if you're specifically in the Sunnyvale area or South Bay area and you'd like to reach out to Marie and her team, we're going to give you the ability to do that. The other thing, as we've heard today, is that you can donate. That certainly isn't the emphasis of our web series and certainly isn't the emphasis of the panel today, but it is important to know that there are a limited number of ways to give and to give your time. Right now is very difficult. And so as Marie said, and also we've experienced that right now organizations like DST, like Sunnyvale Community Services, all the other nonprofit groups that we work with do need financial support. We are doing more now than we've done before to cover the gaps that are left from service providers. And so your financial contributions certainly go a long way and are much appreciated by Downtown Streets team, and again, other nonprofit partners. This isn't a pitch specifically for Downtown Streets team. The other thing that came up earlier in the conversation when Chris was talking to Natan is to advocate, certainly advocating for policies that support unhoused people, is a way to move the conversation forward. And so we've given you some ability to do that below with some links and some resources there. So you can write to your city, county, and state representatives, also to some national organizations there, but staying involved at the local level can prove to be very beneficial to folks in your community who are experiencing homelessness. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chris. Thanks for the opportunity to be a part of the talk today.
Yeah, and I just posted a few of the links that we have here, so you can actually click on them directly from the chat box. But it's a really easy way to, you just put in your zip code, and it's a way to speak directly with the decision makers who are deciding how that funding is going to get divvied out, and to prioritize folks that probably need it the most. We definitely ask for your help doing that, and that's a free way to contribute and help us and our other panelists in our efforts. So with that, thank you to our panelists. I knew every single one of you. Thank you. There's a very good reason, I think is pretty evident now, why I asked you to be on this panel in particular. So thank you for your time and your expertise and all that you do out there. I really appreciate it. We appreciate it at DST. And speaking of we, I have to give a special thank you to Rebecca, who you just heard from, for putting this series together with me. I really appreciate you and your team, Jack and Annalisa. Thank you for all your help on the back end. And then my partner in crime, Erica, who's running the slideshow and doing all the admin. So thank you, Erica, for never getting enough credit, but always doing the hard work. I appreciate you. And to everybody who joined, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us for this web series. Shelter Without Place is complete. We will send out the recording. We've been seeing a lot of views after the fact, and so you'll have the ability to do that and share that as well. We really appreciate this opportunity and this opportunity to spend time with you and bring in folks from our network that can really provide so much more perspective than we could do as a singular agency. And so it's been an absolute joy. Over the next couple weeks, we're going to be really focused on how to get our teams out there, which is very exciting, and how to do so safely. Which is something as an organization we're incredibly excited about and looking forward to, but it's going to be a lot of work, and so we won't be able to spend as much time planning web series, but we hope to be back someday, hopefully in the new normal, and talk about more work that Downtown Streets Team and our partners are up to. So with that, thank you all so very much, and we'll sign off. Have a great evening.